This is an Israelite Jules recording.
The Book of Remembrance of our Ancient Grandmothers. Chapter 10. An account of the life of Noah, from his birth, through his courtship, and marriage.
And it came to pass, that, after seeing all these marvelous truths, I continued to be anxious to learn more, of the wonders, that Matzah wanted to perform for his father, as he set himself about the task of preparing the world for the conditions which would lead to the holy people returning to Eden, and the wicked in Helliah, being destroyed by water. And I once again took up Urim, and the scribes prepared themselves to record the vision. And again, before my eyes, came a vision of Iona. And I beheld her again, as she received word, that her husband had taken 2 new wives. And after the Lord counseled her not to heed his summons to go to him, she went instead into the deep reaches of western Qatar. Now, the people where she had been living had named her with a new name, and it was Alman, because she had been forsaken by her husband. For when the people learned that she no longer had a husband, they viewed her, and looked upon her as one who had chosen not to go to him. And in their eyes, she was the first woman to be divorced. And it was understood by them that she was not to speak, or offer her opinion or advice to anyone, because she had been cast aside by her husband. And she was now seen as a wayward woman, because of her husband. And when Iona was at the pool of heaven, and she heard Bodin speaking with her companions about her white stone, she said nothing, but went home, and pondered upon that which she had heard. And later when she opened her hand to show Bodin the white stone, she had been given again, she spoke very little, but quietly invited Bodin to her dwelling place, so she could converse with her. And this was because she could speak freely in her encampment, for Jubal had compassion on her, and he established their settlement, a little ways off, from the others. And their encampment was viewed with disdain, because in it, she was treated as other women. And I could see that, here was a holy woman, who was the keeper of the water tablet, who was the grandmother of Noah, and the great-grandmother of Melchizedek, who was in this way looked upon narrowly by the unknowing. And as I considered these things, I began to understand that the Lord allowed these things to transpire for a wise purpose, for in her future, it would be the way, designed by the Lord, that she and her family find obscurity and isolation, in order for Noah to perform his task in calling forth the flood, and thus be protected from all the designs of the forces of evil. And when they went to see Yatzgad, the brothers of Iona heard concerning the division of the watchers of heaven. And she would have them speak a little to her each day, and she would go off by herself, and put it to memory. And she consulted with listeners, and they taught her how to remember that which she would hear. And she memorized all the doings of Enoch, in the naming of the watchers of heaven. And she inquired into all things that were taught at the pool of heaven. And she learned from anyone she could. And she would take people aside, and ask them to have compassion on her, and teach her. And the righteous did not call her Alman. And when she received the water tablet, she sent word to Enoch, that she wanted to be taught concerning it. And a year passed, when a traveler came and asked in the encampment, "Do you have one here called Iona?" And the people said, "Yes." And the traveler said, "I have word from Enoch." And when he came to Iona, he told her the message from Enoch which said, "Enochist will provide at the pool of heaven." So, Iona went to the pool of heaven earnestly, seeking. And she learned from Abera, and amongst his teachings, he taught the water tablet. And he said, it was fitting that it should be taught at the pool of heaven. And as time went by, Iona taught the children of Bodin all these things also. And she was known in her day as a great teacher. And because of her diligence to teach, Noah was very familiar with the watchers of heaven. And people would say, "How is it that people are taught by one called Alman?" And the Lord smiled upon her. Now, in her dwelling place, she could speak as other women, in whatever manner she chose, both to her family, and to any who visited her encampment. And Iona loved her white stone, because it was the element of righteousness, given to her, by an angel of heaven, assuring her that Anokist approved of her, and was pleased that she walked in the way that he had guided her. And the white stone declared in this way that she stood innocent before the Lord, no matter how she was viewed by the people. And no one knew better than she that inside her white stone was a name, and it was Anokist, and she loved the one who said, I am loving kindness. And it can be seen that all things worked for her good, and the Lord performed his wondrous work. And because of all these things, her kinsmen and people began to be more and more alone and separate from the people. And I saw that Iona and Bodin had a close bond, because they held their white stones in common. And when Lamech, the son of Iona, and Bodin, the daughter of Amizadad, were married, the Lord appeared to Bodin, and he gently told her that she was seen to be highly favored in heaven. And I beheld, with Urim, that Bodin was very close to creation. And she was one in her spirit with the Irkod Shoy. And she was confident and comfortable with solitude. And she was respected by her people, and thought upon as one who was like the ancients, in her nature. And she could blend into the Irkod Shoy, like unto her father Amizadad. And her special places to seek the Lord, and to meet with him, were in the tight thickets, where she could not be seen. And Shemael was her guardian. And, when the people did not know where she was, or what she was doing, they did not worry, because Matzah was her companion wherever she went. And in all these things, it can be seen, that the one whose womb was holy, and the keeper of the water tablet, who had turned themselves aside from the traditions of the people, to walk in holiness, were indeed being prepared in their lives, to perform a special task for Matzah the Lamb. And they were also being separated, so they did not walk in the way of the people, during the raising of evil, before the time of the flood. And I knew that because Noah would be different than other men, he had to be raised up in very special ways. Now remember, that in the midst of all this, they knew that they both were approved of, by Anokist. And thus, the mother and grandmother of Noah went into those tumultuous times, being prepared with confidence and holiness of heart that would carry them through. And it came to pass that many of those left behind by the masters of Seku were ignorant and prone to violence. And they began to encroach upon the righteous in the land of Qatar. And it was at this time that Jubal and all in the encampment determined to move westward. And also, the masters of Seku, with their evil Nephilim, began to make forays into Qatar. And it was at the time when Rishuya and Aku were killed that Jubal went westward. And as they traveled, the Spirit led them, insomuch that they came to a river west of the river, Hales. And there, in a quiet and isolated valley, they settled, and met a very tall and thin man named Rock. And he was the first to cultivate fruit trees. And he had many apricot trees under his care. And by, he became close friends with Lamech and Bodin. And he taught Lamech how to tend fruit trees. And they were often seen together. And they both were not travelers, but quiet, peaceful, and sedentary men. And Lamech taught Rock in all the ways of the Lord. And Rock was very intent to learn concerning the gentle guidances of Anokist, after the manner of the things taught on the guidance tablet of Enoch. And he was very diligent to follow them in all his daily walk. And it was known that Rock was from the western high places that overlooked the Shaman Sea. And he was a descendant of Micah. And he fled from the wicked there, when they became too numerous. And when he found his new home, the Lord led him to know how to tend apricot trees and grapevines. And these two men had their interests in common, because Lamech was the first to cultivate cucumbers, and leeks, and beans. And they both loved Anokist. And their families prospered in their walk upon the earth in that place. And the place where they dwelt was called Ebenem. And it was here that Bodin first conceived, and she delivered a child, and it was a girl. And she was named Arvade. And she grew in stature before the Lord, and she chose to be a great traveler like unto Lulki, the wife of Abera. And in those days, solitude for the inhabitants of Ebenem was sweet, as wickedness and violence were fast spreading across the land, coming down from the north country where the masters of Seku were assembling. And I saw that Arvade came to marry one of the sons of Rock. And his name was Phut. And it can be seen that Phut had much disdain for violence. And he would take any measure to avoid it. And he would take his family and travel in order to avoid the prospect of violence. And they joined with some of like mind, and formed a roving band. And they herded sheep. And they grazed all the places on the earth, for a wide area. And they knew where to find provisions and water. And they knew all the news of every sort that they learned in their travels. And they were often called upon by others, so they could find their way about. And I beheld that Arvade became the grandmother of the Bedouins. And they were intent upon peaceful living. And they became known for their hospitality and skill in enduring hardship. And it came to pass that Bodin conceived again, and bore another daughter. And she was named Atun. And Atun learned from her father how to grow a plant, and from it obtain that which she could weave into cloth. And the cloth was named after her. And it was very light and cool to wear in the heat of the sun. And her cloth was called Atun cloth, which we know today as linen. And the Lord told her that the cloth was holy, because it was made white in the light of the sun. Now, the encampment where the two women dwelt was called Ebenem, because of the two white stones they held. And the people prospered before the Lord with that which they cultivated. And I saw a small green tree with green fruit upon it, and when it turned dark, it became sweet to eat. And it came to pass that Bodin conceived a third time. And as she lay praying about the coming of another child, the Lord came to her, and he said, "This child will bring rest to my father Anokist and the earth. And he will bring comfort to me, for I have walked in many cares and trials. And I have seen to it that he will come into the world, having a grandmother and a mother, who stand approved of by my father, and ones who are seen to be innocent upon the earth. And he shall be called Noah." And the Lord ended his speaking. And Bodin was a very righteous woman, who would walk with the Irkod Shoy every day. And she had thickets along the river, where she would resort, because she loved the willows and the joyous water. And the children would know where to find her, but they respected her and would not disturb her, when she went to be alone with the Lord. And on a bright sunny day in spring, when she was heavy with child, while the apricots were in bloom, she went to be in a thicket on the edge of the river. And there, in the night, she gave birth to the child Noah. And when it was light, she beheld that the child was as white as snow. And his hair was also very white, and his eyes were brightly colored, like a soft sunrise. And he was very little. And she was astonished beyond measure. And she washed him in the lustral water of the river. And she bathed in it also. And she had to hide his eyes from the brightness of the sun. And the child was born happy. And he did not cry. And with his white hair and bright eyes, he was the first such child to be born upon the earth. And it came to pass that Bodin prayed for her little child. And as she held him closely to her, the strong presence of the Spirit came and rested upon her. And it said to her that this little son would be a special treasure to Anokist, and that he must be raised up unto him in a special way, so that his being different than others would not cause him to be found an object of ridicule as he grew. And the messages of the white stones would carry on to apply to him, so that all his days he would feel that he was seen by Anokist to be innocent before him. And he must not be raised up as other children, but that he is one who has found favor in the sight of Anokist, because of the innocence and diligence of his mothers. And Bodin thought to herself that the child was made white, because he came from two mothers with white stones. And Bodin remained in the thicket, and would not come out to show herself. And when the people saw that she delayed her coming, and knowing she was about to deliver, they sent a maiden to seek her. And she called out to her, and Bodin answered, and bid her come. And when she found her, Bodin had Noah, hidden inside the mantle of her clothing, in her bosom. And this was very common with a mother, of a new baby, but she would not leave the thicket. And she said to the maiden, Go, and bid Iona, to come to me. And Iona came with haste, not knowing of her welfare to be delivered. And Bodin opened up her mantle, and showed Noah to Iona. And she rehearsed all the words of the Lord to her. And, when Iona had heard all these things, she burst out in song, praising the Lord. And she prophesied many things, concerning the child. And there were those, who had followed along with Iona, who heard the singing. And both women remained in the thicket. And, when they again would not come out, there was sent the maiden again to see. And Iona said, Send for Lamech, to be with us here, for a very holy thing has come to our world. And when Lamech stepped forward to come, and he entered into the thicket, they showed him the child. And Lamech was much taken aback, and he gasped. And Bodin discerned his thoughts, and she rehearsed to him all the words of the Lord to her. And then he knew that the Lord was well pleased with the child. And he exclaimed in his delight, that this his first son, looked very much like him. And Lamech tenderly held his new son. And they all remained in the thicket, until the dawn of a new day. And during the night all the people of the encampments, round about, gathered because listeners had spread the news of what had been happening. And none knew of the cause of the excitement. And Lamech was very moved, with love, for his son. And, from the day on, which Noah was born, their souls were joined as one. And when it was light, they all returned to their dwelling place. And the infant was hidden from the light of the sun. And on the day of his birthing worship, all the people learned, that he was white as snow, and that his eyes were as the light of the sunrise. And upon hearing these things, many of them withdrew, and found new places to live. And in this way, the settlement of Abinim was cleansed of those who found it difficult to hear the voice of the Lord in their hearts. And Bodin and Lamech determined with a firm mind, that they would raise up the child unto the Lord. And they would not allow his being white to affect his walk in righteousness before the Lord, or among the people. And they would protect him from ridicule, and rejection, and the superstitions of the people. And it was decided, that they would teach him, of the teachings, and writing of Enoch, and Aberah. Now, about this same time, the wife of Roch bore a little daughter. And he named her Imzara, after the fruit of trees, because she was to him beautiful like an apricot blossom, which was in full bloom, on the day of her birth. And her cheeks were rosy like apricots, when she was born. And, as I looked with Urim, I could see, that Noah was much younger than his sisters. And Arvade beheld him when she returned from her travels. And she said, This truly is a child sent from heaven. And she gave her mother herbs to strengthen his eyes. And Atun saw to it, that Noah was always clothed in linen, which was her special cloth. And she made him a coat, with a covering for his head, to shield his eyes from the sun, and to keep his appearance from being a curious thing to others. And it came to pass, that Noah became strong, and robust, and very active in his childhood pursuits. And even as a child, and a youth, he walked with Enochized. And he was often obliged to pass his time, during the heat of the day, in the shade by the river. And because of this, he rarely had any other children to play with, other than his sisters, who were much older. And he became tightly bound to the waters. And his mother taught him all the ways of knowing how to discern the Spirit of the Lord. And his father taught him in all the ways of righteousness. And Lamech taught him in the skills of walking with the Irkod Shoi. And Noah thrived in all the ways of following the example of Aberah. And he mastered the knowledge of the gentle guidances of Enochized. And Iona taught him concerning all the divisions of Enoch. And he became fully aware of the evils, of the effects of the Decadarchoi. And because of all these things, holiness was foremost in his heart as he grew to be a man. And I saw plainly with Urim, that this one called Noah, was indeed a man of God. And it was plain to me, that he was one, who would be foremost in determining the course of the earth. And the importance of this, grew in me, and I began to want to know more about him in my heart. And I desired to learn of this man, about how much has been reported. And I knew, that I had to be willing to allow the Lord to reveal to me with Urim, the truth about Noah, and to open up to me, knowledge that may be far different than that which has been reported elsewhere. And the Lord was merciful to me, and I began to view in the Urim, the truth, and that which I had never before considered. And before my eyes, came a view of Noah in his childhood, in the abode of his family. And the fire lit up the room, for me to see. And Bodin was cooking on the fire. And there came a woman, into their dwelling, and she stooped, as she came through the low door. And she was frightened and had a child, in each arm, and Bodin asked, "What is the matter?" And the woman said, that there was a creature in her dwelling place. And it was dark, when she entered, and she could not tell what it was, but it growled at her. And as Bodin and Iona were preparing a place for her to spend the night with them, little Noah slipped out the door. And by Noah returned, and he said, "There is no need to fear, the creature is gone now. It was only an animal called a teresh. And I could see, it was some kind of a badger." And Noah said, "It has turned back, and has gone home now." And his grandmother Iona asked him about what had happened. And Noah said, "The animal was afraid, because the dogs had gotten between it and its home, by the river bank. So Noah went in, and he spoke softly to it, and he led it back home. And Noah said, When I spoke to it, I invited it to not be afraid, for I would accompany him back to the river. And I shooed the dogs away, and we passed by safely. And the teresh was one who I had often spoken with, at the river. And the woman remained to spend the night with them. And all who heard these things seemed not to think this kind of account as unusual. And Bodin knew why Shemael was her especial guardian. And she would find Noah playing by himself with the animals of the thickets, and the birds of the air, and the deer of the field. And Noah would implore the hunters not to disturb the animals surrounding their encampment. And the birds of the air would come to him to be fed. And he went on a journey south with his sister Arvade, and he saw goats for the first time, high in the rocks there. And he was the first to tame goats. And because of him, goats were added to the flocks of the people. And Arvade loved her goats. And they were very slender, and fleet on their feet. And she called them Akko. And I think they were what we call an ibex. And I saw that superstition began to have its way with some of the people in the surrounding encampments, for the people had heard talks that the secret society of Seku sinned against animals, and birds, and the fish of the sea. And they did not understand Noah and his righteousness. And I saw that in all the close encampments there were those who were afraid of the settlement of Abinim, because they did not understand that which they heard about Noah. And many moved away from the quiet valley there. And the land continued to be at peace, and milk and honey were in abundance there. And Jubal, Rock, and Lamech were content to dwell there, and were very protective over the happiness of their people. And it could be seen that superstition always surrounded Noah both, because he did not have the appearance of others, and because of his walk with the Irkod Shoi. And it became clear to me that the Lord had set his hand to see that these righteous people in this peaceful valley could perform tasks for him, in his yearnings for the world, of his father Anokized. And it was the holiness of the mothers of Noah that allowed him to be raised up with a normal view of life. And Iona was well suited to do so, because she inherited the power of forgiveness from her mother Ada. And it was her unrelenting compassion on the unknowing and the superstitious that empowered her to be successful before the Lord and the people. And it came to pass, that I continued to view all these things, with an expectant heart. And I began to see again. And I saw that Noah spent the heat of the day in the shade by the river. And he would move out upon the land in the morning or evening, when the light of the sun was mild. And one evening after a meal, he sat by, and he spoke of the wonders of the Lord, and the miracle of the Irkod-Shoi. And as he looked about, he espied a light coming from the river, down by his place of prayer. And he wondered who could have kindled a fire there, because people usually left the place alone, knowing it was sacred to him. And as he looked, he saw that the light reflected up upon the trees without a flicker. And it was seen to be aglow. And Noah went forward to see what it could mean. And he went quietly and respectfully. And when he arrived, no one was there, but all the place was lit up with a clear and penetrating light. The light was even to be seen on the ground among the willows. And Noah said, "Lord, are you here?" And the Lord said, "Here am I." And when Noah looked, he found that the Lord was there sitting on a clump of grass. And Noah went over and sat beside him on the ground. And the Lord began to speak to him. And the richness of the love they had for one another could not be measured. And as I looked, it seemed to me that Noah was a youth at this time. And the eyes of Noah were opened, and in his soul he was born anew. And the Lord began to instruct him, and he said, "I have an important task for you, my son. The wicked in the valleys of Heliah, with their Nephilim, are bringing violence and a great evil into creation. And they are joining together the souls of men, with the spirits of animals, and birds, and the fish of the sea. And in this way, the visions of created purpose, given them by my Father, are lost. And the time will come, when it is my desire that you bring to fruition the prophecies of the Mother of all the living regarding the waters of the earth." And the Lord continued, and he said, "When in certain times holiness is required of you, in large measure, it would be well for you to eat bread made with the seeds of the Shoshan flower and asib." And I saw that the Shoshan flower was a kind of large water lily. And the seeds of the Agmor plant, mixed in, will offer you protection when you approach to bless Anokized. And I saw that the Agenor plant is a bulrush with a very heavy top tilled with seeds. And the Lord impressed upon Noah that he must be always found to walk in harmony with the waters of the earth and of heaven, for they will be the means to bring comfort to Matzah, and assist him in his tasks for his father. And it came to pass that Bodan prayed for her son, when he went to discover about the light at the river. And she went in alone into her dwelling. And the strong presence of Matzah was there to greet her. And she bowed down before him. And the Lord instructed her that now was the time for Iona to teach Noah all that was known and written upon the water tablet. And that it was time for Noah to begin to be the keeper of it. And it was very important that all be done according to the leading of the Spirit, because Noah must have dominion over the waters of the earth and of heaven. And the Lord instructed her that he must not eat red meat, but fish and waterfowl only, so that their spirits could be inseparably joined in their love for Anokized. And in these things, his life would be nourished by his near kindred, and his principal Irkod-Shoi, all of which were associated with the waters of the earth. And the Lord opened up before Noah a vision of pure waters. And I could see that Noah was very moved upon in his love for the Lord, and he did not want him to leave. And as he discerned that the Lord was withdrawing, he desired to go with him, but the Lord constrained him, and told him that he must continue upon the earth. For he had marvelous deeds yet to perform for his father, Anokized. And Noah slept upon the ground. And when it began to be light, he returned home. And the people beheld his countenance to be shining from his encounter with Matzah the lamb. And Noah rehearsed all things to his mother and grandmother. And Lamech was well pleased. And the people were greatly blessed in their faith. And praising could be heard in the encampment. And I saw that Noah had a full head of hair like Enoch, and he kept it in a covering upon his head. And it came to pass, that the women began to alter his food according to the instructions of the Lord. Now, Noah had a stone in the river, where he would offer up unto the Lord the element of righteousness. And thus, the stone served him, as an altar. And Iona would bless it by casting element upon the water, that would flow by. And Bodin found that, she must have wherewith to sift the lily seeds that floated upon the water. And Noah made her a willow basket. And thereafter, he was known to be a basket maker. And he began to dwell by the river in a dwelling made of water reeds. And he began to wear a rope of bulrushes around the top of his head, over the covering of a tune cloth. And I marveled at the kind of a man Noah was becoming as he grew into manhood. And in my heart, I desired to learn more about him. And I began to see him grown, and walking in the way near his encampment. And overlooking his pathway from above, are a band of brigands. And they descend down, to stand in his way. And they contended together as to who among them would have his cloak, and which one his staff. And all the while, Noah is standing still. And then he sat upon the ground, and laid his staff down beside him. And it was clear, he did not intend to fight with them. And his head was covered with the cloth, that came down over his shoulders. And one among the brigands, who seemed prominent, said, "Come, let us kill him, and be off." And one of them pulled the covering off his head. And Noah smiled, and looked up with compassion, upon them. And when they beheld him to be white, and his eyes shone like fire, they shrank back in fear. And they fled away from him. And Noah wept, because of their fear, and sin. And the young man who had uncovered his head, lingered in the shadows behind the others, to watch Noah. And Noah hailed him, and motioned for him to come and sit near him on the ground. And the man approached him slowly, and stood a ways off. And he was very thin. And his clothing was in shreds, and was filthy. And Noah did not look directly upon him, but gazed upon the ground and asked him how his family fared. And the young man sat down and said that he had no family, and had been alone without kindred, all his days. And Noah said, "Have you eaten?" And the man said he was faint, for the want of food. And Noah arose, and bid the brigand to come to eat with him. And when they arrived at the camp, Bodin cooked bread for him, with fish, and he was refreshed. And thus, she ministered to him, and brought refreshing to his spirit. And she served him food he never had seen before. And, in all these things, his fear began to diminish. And he lay down and slept. And he remained to visit, for some days. And he was given a new cloak, and he bathed in the river. And when he thought he was to leave, Noah prayed over him, that he would come to have kindred, and be blessed to overcome his loneliness. And Lamech gave him a name, and it was Yasha, because of the compassion of the Lord, that could rescue him to happiness. And because of these acts of love, Yasha asked if he could dwell among them. And the people considered the matter, and it was determined that he could stay, if he learned to work in the gardens. And Lamech gave him a bowl to eat with. And Yasha was completely taken in by the love of the people there. And it came to pass, that Phut and Arvad came by in their travels, and they took him with them. And it was reported, that he found his rightful rib, and they had come to have many daughters, who dearly loved their father. And they doted upon him with much tenderness of heart. And thus, I was shown, that Noah grew to be a man, overflowing with compassion. And he was confident, and without fear. And it was the wisdom of his mother, and the forgiving spirit of his grandmother, that enabled him to be raised up unto the Lord, this way, seeing he was different than those around him in his appearance, and in his acts of righteousness. And in those days, wickedness began to increase, in all the land surrounding the encampments of the righteous. And Noah could feel the sorrow of a no-keist, descending in the midst of the hills, and upon the waters. And it was during the heat of the day, and Noah was in his reed dwelling by the river, when the earth began to shake. And it was the first such shaking, that anyone knew of. And no one could stand upon their feet. And all the dwellings made of grass, were shaken bare, for the grass was shaken off, but the house of reeds of Noah withstood, and remained. And everyone was afraid, and called upon Matzah the lamb. And when the shaking ceased, Noah stepped out to the river bank, and great waves of water came down the river, to be the height of the knee of a grown man. And the water washed over Noah, and tumbled him in the midst of it. And when he stood up, he was refreshed, and he praised the Lord. And he heard a voice coming from the earth. And it mourned, and said, I am grieved. All I know is violence to be in the hearts of my children, and I am continually in the midst of sorrow and fear. And I mourn for the purposes of Enoch, for his children upon the earth seem that they have come to naught. And Noah exclaimed to the earth, When will you rest? And Noah heard the earth reply, I will rest, when wickedness is done away, and I am cleansed by the waters that purify me, from the filth that has gone forth out of me. And Noah had compassion on the earth, and on Enoch. And Noah bowed down, and he repented for the sins of the people. And the Spirit of the Lord rested upon Noah. And when Noah returned to his mother and father, to see how they fared, he told them all he had heard the earth say, and that which happened when the waters washed over him. And Iona was listening. And she said, The earth shook, to reprove us, and to call us to walk in the ways of righteousness. I know, this is the very day of the measure of Milu. And it is the day when all our holy ancient people followed her into the waters of the Aral Sea, to confirm with the washings of purifications, that they would give their lives to Matzah the lamb, and hold nothing back. And my son, you must have been taken under the water, to rise up like Milu, in your willingness to give your life to him. We all must stand reproved, that we have not kept this righteousness of the division of days, as taught by Enoch. And all the people said, Surely, it is even as you say. And they all went down to the river, and spoke to one another, and taught the young ones the meaning of the day, of the measure of Milu. And they went down into the water, and rose up unto forgiveness and purity. And thus all were baptized. And it came to pass, that word was spread abroad, and Iona taught the division of days to all who came to their encampment. And many lives were renewed, and set in order by her teaching. And I could perceive that the Lord was preparing the righteous with his reproval, for the great things that were to come upon the earth, with the impending flood. And after those days, many of the encampments of the righteous kept the division of days, with their feasts and blessings for Enoch, which they represent. And Lamech began to zealously exercise his holy order of service, after the manner of Aberah. And he taught repentance. And he was gentle and tender-hearted. And he rejoiced when he heard that Yasha now had a family, for word had come soon after his departure with Phut, that a band of brigands had been searching for him to take vengeance on him, for his having departed away from them. But when the brigands beheld him and his family to be in rich happiness, many of them abandoned their masters, and began to travel with the people of Arvade. And I saw that Lamech was very learned in all the ways of righteousness. And he was known in the land to be the foremost man in the land, according to the ways of holiness. In the days before Enoch departed with his people, to return to Eden. And Lamech was highly favored in the eyes of the Irkod Shoi, and they would respond to his bidding with delight. And many of the righteous saw him to be the one to seek out when desiring to do the things of the Lord. And the teaching of Iona bore fruit in him. But the greatest offering was yet to come in the life of Noah. And I beheld that Noah in his calling to serve Enoch would be greatly assisted by his rightful companion. And I began to have unfolded before me concerning his courtship and marriage. And Noah was born at the same time as Emzerah. And they had ceremonies of passage, just days apart. And they played together as children. And Barakah had given the song of the dance of Kava to Iona, and she had given it to Botan, who passed it to Emzerah on the day of her coming of age. And I saw Emzerah as a little girl, dancing between the apricot trees, in the orchard of her father, while Noah looked on. And she would pick an apricot up on one side, and hand it down to her playmates, on the other side. And the children were like a fragrance of sweetness before a no-keysed. And as they grew, Noah and Emzerah loved each other very deeply. And they began to inquire together if they were a man, and his rib. And Lamech said, Noah has been seen to be associated with calling forth the waters of the earth, to cleanse it. And the name Emzerah means, Behold the man of turbulent waters, who will harvest, and cast out the dross. And because of his declaration, it was determined, that the two of them were to be married. And Noah and Emzerah went rejoicing together to see grandmother Iona. And she told them to select their espousal gifts wisely. And Noah gave her a bowl of fresh, red, grape juice, and a loaf of bread to ask her to always influence him to be patient, and to be happy, with the life that is in all things. And she gave him a brightly colored leaf that fell from a tree, with sweet sap, and a honeycomb, to ask him to always be strong in the face of that which is to come, and to keep the sweetness of childhood into his old age. And I beheld that Emzerah wore a mantle upon her head like Noah, but without the rope of bulrushes. And this she did because in her heart she felt joined with him in all things. And she was the first woman to cover her head in this way. And it began to be a sign of modesty and grace in the eyes of others. And she was a lady of the Service clan. And Emzerah was tall and thin, and she very graceful in the dance. And she would dance beside the river bank, near the altar of Noah, in the water. And Noah was much moved in his love for her in his heart, to watch her dance before the Lord, in perfect purity and innocence of heart. And they lived a life of rich happiness. And it was a blessing that the wicked were superstitious, and stayed away from the encampments there, for the righteous were in this way protected. And the young men of Abiram would sally forth, when they heard of children who were abandoned by their people, and they would bring them home to care for them. And in time, many of them formed a separate encampment, and Arvad would also encourage some of them to go with them, in their many travels. And Noah had a strong desire in his heart to rescue the lost, and abandoned, and those who would desire to be righteous in their hearts. And it came to pass, that Emzerah conceived, and she brought forth a daughter. And they named her Maud. And it was prophesied at her birth, that she would be heard from afar, and that she would be one, from whom it would be known, all that happened among her people in distant generations. And she was a listener from an early age. And as she grew, she was intent to remember all the words and doings of her father. And she was not shy in all her pursuits. And all the people loved her for her rejoicing, and overflowing happiness. And it came to pass, that Emzerah conceived again, and she brought forth a son, and they named him Aha. And it was prophesied at his birth, by Iona, that he would build a wall, between his family and the forces of evil. And he became one, who made Atun cloth. And at an early age, he became skilled at making it. And by, Noah had another son, and he named him Yedishia, because Noah said, This one can expand the truth of a no-keysed. And he took great delight in his children. And he watched over them like a very tender father. And it came to pass, in those days, the slaves that were freed by the masters of Seku, did not know how to live without a master over them. So, they began to collect into settlements where there was much chaos. And there were many small groups of them across the land. And in the course of time, it came to be that each settlement had a master. And most of the masters followed the way they had known, and they were severe to their people. And none of them knew anything of the religion and practice of the society of Seku. And they began to consider that it was their god, El, that made their masters to rule. And they called them Melech, or that is to say, king. And they disputed among themselves which master was the greatest, in much the same ways as did the masters of Seku, who had all gathered into Helia. And they all strove for power, over their fellows, and the attainment of the satisfaction of possessions. And any settlement that did not have a master was looked down upon. And during this time, Emzerah conceived again. And she brought forth another son. And at his birth Noah said, No man shall be his master, but the righteousness of Anochized alone. So, the child was named Melchizedek, which is to say, My king is righteousness. And after conferring together, all his relatives decided that in order to protect him from the rivalries that he may encounter, and to safeguard his vision, they would simply call him the name, which is said, Shem. And thus, in this way, the child would be hidden from the wicked, in his purpose before Anochized. And all his days when in the company of strangers, he was called Shem. And on the very same day, in another dwelling in their encampment one of the sons of Phut and Arvad had a daughter born. And it was prophesied at her birth, that she would be the feelings of righteousness made flesh, and that the righteousness of Anochized would live in her heart. And thus, her name was Sedek-Telebab. And in those days, the 3 sons of Noah, and his daughters, lived after the manner of happiness. And, as the children of Noah and Emzerah grew into adulthood, the wicked began to encroach more, and more, into the land surrounding their settlement. And Aha, being a peaceable man, fled southward to the land of a great river together with the children of Atun, and he settled into the marshes of the river where it emptied northward into the sea, along with those who accompanied him there. And his people became the original inhabitants of the land there. And Aha was skilled at making Atun cloth, and his people were known to be those who wore it for many succeeding generations. And it can indeed be seen that this son of Noah did build a wall between his people and the wicked. And the wicked were loath to enter the marshes to come against them, for fear of the insects and snakes. And they were afraid of the fearsome creatures that hid themselves in the waters there. And the people of Aha dwelt in safety for many generations before the wicked overcame them in that place. And at a time, close to when the flood was to occur, Yedishah began to venture out, to go deep into the dark places in the valleys of Helia. And it began to be reported that he went there to seek a new wife, because he heard that the women there adorned themselves to be enticing to look at. And after a time, he returned no more to his home and was not seen again. And his family grieved exceedingly. And his wife Adab became a woman of Almon. And she was called Adab, after he abandoned her. And the name Adab began to mean, to mourn, or, to languish, because of an empty home, but at her birth, her name meant, the one who makes a happy home. And Noah said, My heart is broken, as now my son Yedishah, whose name means to expand the truth of Anochized, has departed away seeking the evil of lust. And now, his name must be called, Japheth, the one who expands deceit. And Noah and Emzerah grieved over their son all their days. And in the course of time, Noah had to call forth the flood, to cover all the valleys of Helia, even knowing his son would be there. And I saw that Emzerah was seen to be the foremost woman upon the earth, in her day. And she was diligent before the Lord, to raise up Melchizedek unto righteousness. And Maud and Aha had grown into adulthood and left to go their ways in their service to the Lord, but Melchizedek remained all his days by the side of his parents. And he was a comfort to them. And it came to pass, that I beheld with Urim, all that has been written in this record. And there are too many things that took place, to give a more full account here, but a complete account shall be given hereafter, from the tablet of Shabuah.